Well, also today, the government was defending its plan to send asylum seekers to Rwanda in the Supreme Court. Sir James EDKC, representing the Home Office, told the court the policy was safe and lawful, despite the East African country being less attractive to migrants than the UK. It's after the Court of Appeal ruled the policy was unsafe, as there was a risk that Rwanda could send migrants back to their country of origin. You're with GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to Headliners, your first look at tomorrow's papers. I'm Simon Evans and I'm joined tonight by the posh and becks of the British comedy circuit, Nicholas DeSanto and Bruce Devlin.
Good evening.
Obviously, you've been designated posh, I guess, because you're wearing the tie, but also you're slighter of build, you know.
Oh,
and
take it as a compliment.
Yeah, and then Bruce is like a national hero and
you
know, a treasure, but not our nation, sadly, Bruce. That's I'm referring to your own home. Do you get much homegrown support? Because we monitor the Twitter feed, but I never really noticed whether it shifts across the border when you're on.
I think some people like the fact that I really don't know what I'm talking about.
Yes,
and
that might be your constituency rather than a nationalistic one. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, but no, I've had some very nice comments on social media.
People find it very comforting, don't they?
Yes.
They don't want to feel alone. That's good. So let's take a look at those front pages. The Daily Mail kick off with Hamas, we'll kill hostage for each Israeli attack. And surprisingly, let's say, those scenes are in Kensington. The Daily Mail, the Guardian next. Israel declares siege of Gaza as Hamas threatens captives, and an explosion there in Gaza. The Financial Times next. Israel enforces complete siege of Gaza. Further horrifying photographic evidence. The Telegraph. Israel no choice but to seize Gaza. The Eye has Hamas threat to execute hostages as Israel prepares ground invasion. The Star has thin edge of the veg. Once again, an outlier. Those were your front pages. So let's begin with the Daily Mail, Nicholas.
Well, of course, the news is still very much dominated by the dramatic conflict in Israel. And we have an image of demonstrators in Kensington in front of the Israeli embassy. The title says, how can the British left make excuses for a terrorist group that murders women and children? Obviously, as usual, Palestinians and in particular Hamas enjoy some sort of solidarity or sympathy among the West. It kind of beggars belief. We were just hearing in our own GB News bulletin, demonstrators, pro-Palestinians chanting, Israel is a terrorist state, just as we've seen images of people being dragged out of their homes, their cars, gunned down, and in some more disconcerting cases, militants or terrorists actually celebrating over their naked dead bodies.
Yeah.
Or they say, end the occupation. Well, I've got news for these people. Israel did end the occupation of Gaza, and they elected Hamas. So the pro-Israeli argument or counter-argument would be, OK, I did end the occupation of that bit. I'm still occupying West Bank, but who guarantees my security if I were to leave that part as well?
As often happens when these things escalate, it makes everyone's position that much more intractable, doesn't it? Anyone who was 50-50 about whether Israel was right to put up a security fence and 500 checkpoints will feel a good deal less inclined to remove that fence in the near future.
Turns out border walls do work.
Yeah, well,
sometimes, if they are done properly.
There are any number of questions, one of which has to be how did their intelligence fail so dramatically? How did they find themselves with various posts unmanned and so on? I mean, had they become lax? It's very hard to say. But certainly I think there is a lot of justified anger at allowing this kind of demonstration outside the Israeli embassy, Bruce. That doesn't seem to be a controversial point.
I'm really. I find it all so appalling. I really do. I find it really it's scary, and I just.
One thing I know that people have said, Nicholas, I don't know whether you have a view on this, is that you know, obviously the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has been going on for, you could say, since the establishment of Israel. But the last 10, 15 years, the escalation there with Hamas installed inside Gaza and so on, and the intensity of it, we're seeing much more evidence that it has support in London and in the UK generally than I can remember. I mean, obviously your memory will be different anyway. Growing up in the last century, there was never this sort of sense that, as somebody said, if Israel does something bad, then Israelis and Jews in London become threatened. You know, extra security has to be provided. And if something is done bad to Israel, extra security is necessary in London to protect Jews. Do you see what I mean? It goes either way. And it just feels to me like this is quite a worrying trend in London, that there is a significant contingent who are pro-Palestine and not ready to apologise for anything that they do.
Well, that is quite alarming, isn't it? Because our overlords keep telling us that diversity is a strength and it's cultural enrichment. And look at some of this. And ironically, they define Britain by its tolerance. And these people, most of them do have British passports, because it's enough not to kill anybody for 6 years in this country and you get a British passport, right? And they say Britain is, because we can no longer define ourselves as a nation by the English language or by the empire or by the Industrial Revolution, because it was not carbon neutral, or colonialism, because all of them were bad and were white supremacy. So we are tolerant. So where is the tolerant here? Because this is terrorism, attacking civilians and taking hostages and celebrating over their dead bodies. And it's quite disappointing to see that even some parties or some even celebrities fail to recognize this and fail to condemn it.
Moving on to The Guardian, Bruce, what do they have a similar lead?
Well, this is to do with the Tory Party conference, the Labour Party conference, where Keir Starmer is to promise new powers for all of England's towns and cities. He wants to kind of mix up devolution and give much more kind of regional representation and powers to councils, etc. And the biggest expansion of devolution since Labour was last in power, he will pledge that councils and combined authorities would get more control over such stuff as housing and planning, skills, energy, transport, and the kind that are currently held by London, the West Midlands and Greater Manchester.
So we're looking at more mayors, essentially.
Essentially, but then are all the kind of, I thought all the councils were kind of going into administration, so I'm not sure where they're going to get them.
It's not riding the crest of a wave in terms of localised municipal authority,
no,
I don't think,
No, it seems a bit more complex.
Some of these mayors, I don't know, some people quite think the Greater Manchester, what's his name,
Andy Burnham.
Burnham he's sort of created a nice little fiefdom for himself up there, isn't he? But, you know, he was a big major Labour, he was a Labour hopeful before Corbyn got in. I don't know too much about it on the day-to-day running of the place, but that has always felt to me like a kind of... It's a natural environment. Greater Manchester is quite a sizable community. It has its own history and its own culture, and I don't know how many more places you can start scaling that down to. I mean, what, Norwich, Ipswich, Cambridge, you know, there comes a point where you think you've got to have a certain amount of critical mass, haven't you, to achieve any independence and have a decent budget?
Well, yeah, because, what they're saying is that the Tories levelling up is just not working, and it hasn't represented anyone. And, of course, the big thing is the HS2 thing that seems to have gone off. So, yeah, as I say, I'm really not sure how they're going to make it work, because, as I say, as they stand at the moment, they don't seem to be... Well, like Birmingham, did they not go into administration recently?
Yeah, they're terrible, terrible. Telegraph next. I think that's back to you.
Right. Obviously, we leave the Israeli conflict out for now. And right at the bottom, we have Guy Fawkes ditched by hard-up council. So we know 5th of
November
is how they're
gonna make their money.
Is round the corner. And a lot of these hard-up councils are basically skimping on bonfires, which are apparently... It's such a shame, because Guy Fawkes obviously is a big story, suggestive story of the history of the British nation.
Glorious pageantry and so on.
Exactly. It's fun for the kids, and as I was saying, we have so many of our cultural or historical identity dismantled or mothballed because of racism
and also,
colonialism.
of course, they now have Halloween 5 days beforehand, which is arguably a bigger celebration for a lot of kids nowadays. Makes more sense to them. They get to dress up in a costume.
It was always a bigger celebration in Scotland, I think it was, because we had a thing called guising. Whereas now it's all this trick-or-treat stuff, which is basically people just mugging you at your door.
My kids have always said Halloween after Christmas, which is obviously purely capitalist, but after Christmas, Halloween is their favourite holiday-stroke festival. It's the one they get most excited about. I think I would say it kind of works for young kids in a way, but Guy Fawkes was always, of course, slightly problematic.
But it's more inspiring.
Literally burning a Catholic. I mean, he was a wrong 'un, no question about it. He'd asked for it, but it probably was installed in order to maintain the kind of religious bigotry. Whereas Halloween is just spookiness, I suppose. Maybe that's not.
I'm allowed to be a bit cynical. I'd say some of these councils that spend thousands on colouring pedestrian crossings into rainbow flags, maybe they could have saved some money there and used it on Guy Fawkes.
I do think, even though it's only over in half an hour, there is something lovely about a large crowd of people gathered on a hillside, isn't there, watching magic unfold in the sky. It's sad to think that might go forever, because once they stop doing it for a couple of years in a row, it will, it'll bump back and bounce.
Yeah.
Finish off with the Daily Star very quickly, Bruce.
Yes, the thin end of the veg. This is Heston Blumenthal's a dish, a vegetable stew, a celery stew in his restaurant is retailing at £40 per head.
Wow, celery
What cost
stew.
of living crisis.
And that used to be a diet, because apparently it has less calories than it takes to digest or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think that's a load of rubbish. It's like the one about the grapefruit and the eggs.
That sounds like a very niche activity. That is the front pages covered. Join us in a couple of minutes for a dip inside. We have Hunt versus Reeves, Judge Dredd versus Shoplifters, Rahman versus Braverman. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at tomorrow's papers. I'm Simon Evans and I'm joined by Nicholas DeSanto and Bruce Devlin. So the Daily Mail to kick us off with this section, Nicholas. And this is one way to avoid school detention, but it's not ideal.
Obviously not. London Jewish school cancels detention and tells students they do not have to wear blazers, as the Metropolitan Police confirmed they will be increasing patrols outside schools to provide reassurance after a spate of anti-Semitic attacks. So, yeah, sadly, as we were discussing, the police are ramping up security, and this school has told the people, or the pupils, or the pupils' parents, rather, okay, blazers optional because they don't want to be too identifiable or easy targets.
I suppose the obvious thing to say is, are the blazers obviously Jewish? I don't know what I mean, perhaps the school is known in the area, but...
I wondered what the iconography might have been on the badge.
Right, OK.
Sort of thing, but obviously we didn't get any images or...
I mean, there are all kinds of ways in which, you know, people who are intent on causing damage might be able to isolate and identify people. I would think the school run is probably going to be monitored quite closely, but I don't know why the detention thing is. Perhaps that's just
because maybe that increases the number of hours people or pupils are there kept together.
There's one interesting thing that a lot of people shared of a picture of a kosher restaurant that had its windows smashed, but apparently they're treating that as a burglary rather than a hate crime.
Yeah, there have been different incidents. Again, it's unfortunate that some echelons of the establishment or the media, like Novara Media, for example, here, notoriously left-wing outlet, one of their editors has said the first day of this war has to be celebrated for all supporters of democracy and human rights. I don't know if they have checked how Hamas treats their beloved LGBT community in the Gaza Strip.
It's so strange, isn't it? The kind of... cognitive dissonance.
It's just their intersectionality hierarchy. So
all the members of Novara Media, one way or another, essentially tweeted support of Palestine, and I think she was the most extraordinary to actually say it was a day of celebration rather than it was in some respects justified by years of oppression and occupation. And
at least they're honest, some of them.
But it is extraordinary, and these people continue to be invited onto BBC Newsnight and so on to give their views about whether GB News should be cancelled. You know, worth bearing in mind. Anyway, Bruce, the Sun.
Yes, so this is Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves was slammed by Jeremy Hunt and a whole host of other people for not mentioning the single biggest economic issue in her major conference speech, and that is the thorny issue of inflation.
The single biggest issue which the Tories have created.
Yes, exactly, that's the whole thing. But it's ping-pong all the time, isn't it? No, you did it, or, you know, a big kid did it, or all that kind of stuff. So basically what Hunt is saying is that in order for Labour to fund everything, because I think they believe that they're going to resolve the economy with all the non-dom status reversals and all that kind of stuff. They want to overhaul universal credit, child benefit and all this kind of stuff. But it will be them borrowing £28 billion in which to fund all these new things. So
you can get a perfectly good track and trace app for that.
Well, yeah, well, this is the thing. She wants to have a COVID inquiry. And I thought, right, OK, that's fine. Why doesn't someone just find where Michelle Mone is and bring her back and ask her some questions? Because I know she's not in the Isle of Man. She's not in Glasgow. So she's at large somewhere.
Maybe she's in China.
You never know.
China. I think the I mean, broadly speaking, Rachel Reeves's budget speech has been intended not to frighten the horses, I think, hasn't it, rather than to activate the base. Would you say?
But then I think that's the party line, though, because we were discussing that the other evening with Starmer, and he was basically saying, look, play it down. The likelihood is we will get in, but we don't want to appear arrogant. We don't want to appear cocky.
At this point, it's there to be lost rather than to be won.
Yeah. When do you think it'll be? Do you think it'll be?
About this time next year.
Right.
Pretty late.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have hoped at some point that, you know, they might have been creating so much pain financially so that they could ease it off a bit just before the election. But the Tories themselves have said there's very little chance of them being able to do that. So I think it is probably going to be an election, a Labour victory. But the question, they just don't want to be slaughtered, do they? That's the thing. They don't want it to be like 97 again, where you get that, you know, it's very hard to build up again, you know.
Yeah, But then, do we not just have to wait for Rupert Murdoch to tell us what colour of party is our new...
Well, he's gone now, isn't he? Although
Has he?
He's still... Yeah, he's actually removed himself, yes. Real-life succession scenario. But
wow.
Anything you wanted to say on this, Nicholas?
Well, you know, in football, pre-match interviews, post-match interviews, both sides give each other a lot of compliments, because if they win, they've won against the big side. If they lose, they've won against...
Yeah, that's good, yeah.
Labour can tell all they want about the disastrous stories, but you've been losing to these guys for 13 years straight, and they've done so much damage that only now you're hoping to win. So it's not really a big compliment to them either.
No, I mean, they've been strangely wrong-footed for a number of years, obviously by Brexit, and they just haven't really seemed to know where their base lies at all. And obviously the massive change that's changed for all social democratic parties across the West is the death of industry, which was their core base, was the working...
And they betrayed their electorate.
And now they have to have a very strange sort of coalition of, you know, metrosexual avocado on toast elites, and the calculations get that much harder. It's not simply a question of going, we support the unions and the right of an honest man to earn an honest wage. It's a much more complicated scenario than that. But having said that, as I say, the Tories hanging by a thread now, I would think.
You just don't know, though.
You don't know.
That's the whole thing.
Nicholas, Times and the young are adding needless expense to their avocado toast and iPhones with this item as well.
Yeah, they have to... Basically, the youth... let's read the title. Young go private amid frustration at NHS care. Yeah, it's hardly shocking there. The NHS, the envy of the world, we are being told, second only to James Corden, maybe. I don't think anybody envies either of those. But... 41% of 18 to 24-year-olds, according to this survey, are even saving, skimping on socializing, on other, expensive gadgets or whatever, to be able to have access to private healthcare, which changes, which shows rather a sea change in attitude compared to previous generations.
I remember I had private healthcare very briefly when I was about 30, I think, and it was pretty affordable then, because you don't get that ill when you're 30. You know, I mean, the reality is health is very much a function of age. You know, I mean, if you could map it across your whole life, roughly half of the costs that you create or incur in the last 18 months of your life. The reality is that I think private insurance schemes or private health schemes and so on, you can almost get it free with a gym membership, you know, when you're...
Well, you can, and an Apple Watch. But you're right about the age thing, because that's where they get you with pet insurance. Because by the time the pet is needing, Librela injections or whatever, they don't want to cover it. It's interesting, though, in Scotland, a lot of my friends have gone private for their teeth.
Right.
Because to try and get in it, I think it's the same up and down the whole of the country, but the waiting list in which to get an NHS dentist can be really long.
But it is interesting that at least morally or ethically or however you put it, they don't really have a problem with it. And I think it may be that the stranglehold, that the false binary between the NHS and the American system is starting to lose its grip on the national consciousness. You know, the idea that if we don't have the NHS, the only alternative is an American system that swallows up 18% of GDP, causes over 80% of bankruptcies in America or medical expenses and so on. There are so many other options.
Exactly.
There are so many other slightly nuanced options that are available in Sweden and Belgium and all the rest of it. Maybe we are starting to see the light. Times again, Bruce, shoplifters could be immediately put into the village stocks.
Well, repeat shoplifters. So, obviously, cost of living crisis and people are out nicking butter and all that kind of thing and whatever.
Yes.
And, fine. Well, not fine, but, that's what it is.
That's not what it is, though.
No, right. Shoplifting has been on the rise as overwhelmed police forces focus more on serious crimes. So this is what I didn't understand. It says here, repeat shoplifters could lose their right to opt for a trial by jury in plans being considered that would help clear the Crown Court backlog. I didn't realise, as a criminal, that you were allowed to say how you were to be tried or whatever sort of thing. But, there are... I'm not saying that shoplifting is right. OK, I'm not. But there are many more serious things that I think need court attention than someone...
Processing it quickly to clear up the backlog, I think that's probably sensible. I think the thing with shoplifting at the moment is it a mix Yes, some people are trying to feed their family, and obviously some are always a cry for help. There is also definitely an uptick in it, just because people realise they can get away with it. It's becoming a cultural thing. Because,
so you're talking about people that aren't just taking a pot noodle, they're taking a plasma screen telly?
They're taking... I mean, some of them are still taking groceries. A lot of it is in co-op, but it's not purely because of the cost of living crisis. It is also because there is a recognition. Once you do it once and you get away with it, you think, well, why would I pay?
No, but this is. I mean, at the risk of sounding a bit cliche, I blame also the social media, because this is a trend also across the Atlantic in the US.
Absolutely.
And we see all these videos in which these youths in hoodies and masks, encouraged by the whole, COVID ideology, storm into these Apple stores, other stores, supermarkets, go for gadgets, and nothing happens to them. The police, if there are any, are outnumbered. Big American chains like Target actively discourage their employees from even confronting these people. So there's no consequences.
What happened with... Do you remember there was all the looting to do with the BlackBerry Messenger about 10, 15 years? Do you remember that? And
I do remember the BlackBerry Messenger.
It was all done on BlackBerry Messenger. I miss my BlackBerry.
Well, Nicholas, we've got time for one more in this section. Labour's Mish Rahman thinks Suella Braverman has an unusual ambition.
Well, she has been Suella Braverman by this Labour member of their National Executive Committee. Mish Rahman has been branded as the most racist brown people in Britain. I mean, if you allow me, when it comes to racism, the worst form of racism comes from the left. And I know a thing or two about it. These people believe that you can have a penis and be a woman, but they have such a hard time believing that somebody can be a bit brown and still love the country or God or be against
the borders or whatever.
Exactly. Because I'm Italian-Iranian. On a good day, I look Italian. But even on those days, they're like, oh, you're Italian, so why do you like Brexit? Don't you want free mobility? And I'm like, do you mean I'm so boring and useless that I could only set foot on these shores?
I don't know if you would call it racism, but there is certainly a bigotry that is directed towards people who are perceived to have been a traitor to their race.
They pigeonhole you because that's classic racism. They say you are brown, or your parents were brown or immigrants, so by definition and automatically you should be in our camp. So you are not allowed to have your own opinion. I mean, what is more racist than that?
There is also a ridiculous tendency, Home Secretaries particularly. I mean, I've always said every single Tory conference, for as long as I can remember, has shown a sickening lurch to the right, according to the newspapers and the left. And every single Home Secretary is much worse than the last one. You know, Priti Patel was regarded as being, again, a traitor to her race and also like a, devil in heels. Theresa May was... There's just been a long sequence of Tory Home Secretaries who are all regarded as being satanic.
I think why people are angry at Suella is because she claims that multiculturalism doesn't work, although she's a very successful product of it.
Yeah.
I think with some people...
But she's a product of multi-ethnicity rather than multicultural. She is part of the monocultural...
It depends how we define multiculturalism.
Unfortunately, we are over our time and we cannot explore this as much as I'd like to, but we are at the halfway point. After the interval, we have self-confessed dinosaurs, Nobel Prize-winning economists and disappointed Brexiters. Very much like the GB News foyer. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners. So, Bruce, Metro now, to no one's great surprise, they've attacked our channel's latest star booking.
Well, they have, and I was only with this person last night. John Cleese struggling to get guests on his new out-of-touch GB News show. Ahead of the debut of his new show that is being produced by Andrew Doyle, John Cleese has revealed that he's struggling to get guests. Well, he never asked me. So, you know, that's completely his own fault.
He's not struggling, present tense, because it's been recorded, hasn't it? And,
yeah, that's why I didn't understand.
And they got some great guests. I think maybe he made some flippant remark about how hard it was to get interesting people, but he got them.
I think the unfortunate thing with Dame John, if I may, is his mouth does run away with himself sometimes. So I think he probably got himself into
They got some good copy just by taking him literally when he was being mischievous. But his thing about saying that it's out of touch is his own joke, isn't it? That's his joke at his expense, I think.
And this is the show, it is called Dinosaurs, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly.
The Dinosaur Hour.
He's celebrating it. Well, it's going to be on GB News. When does it start?
By the 29th of October.
29th. You can judge for yourself. Nicholas, Telegraph now. I must say it sounds easier than I thought to get a Nobel Prize.
Well, Nobel Prize, you know, that's the same prize that went to Yasser Arafat and Barack Obama for doing well. Nothing. Well, this is
not this one though. This
a
is
bit more
economy.
Prestigious because this is an economy. Nobel Prize awarded to gender pay gap economist. And when I first read the title, I thought, okay, so now we are propagating this myth of gender pay gap,
in fact, no,
which doesn't
the other way around.
exist. But to be fair, Claudia Goldin, who is a professor of Harvard, studied gender pay gap or women at work for 4 decades. She has some fair points. Indeed, she says it's not the fault of the so-called sexist bosses that some women earned less because they were, you know, having child-caring duty. Now, here it says she found the main factor holding women's earnings is caring for children. I don't know if the wording is hers or the Telegraph's. I don't agree with the wording because it's not that, you know, it's not holding you back if you care for your children.
Well, it's I mean, just objectively speaking, in terms of your earnings, in terms of your whole life, the balance and what have you put into it, it's a choice hopefully you make for yourself. It does seem to be, it's quite interesting, isn't it? We've probably covered before that in countries which have the greatest gender freedom, where people can do whatever they want regardless of their sex, more women end up taking more time off to have children.
Ironically,
and you know, it's but it obviously, if you've got a 30-year career from which to get from starting out to the board level position, it's going to be harder than if you've got a 40-year career, I guess, you know.
Yeah, because women have been sold this lie or this myth that toiling in a, you know, gloomy, bleak corporate job rather than caring for your children, that is freedom, right? And then they reach 40 and they realize that, you know, they're not happy. And
my wife has done it all. She's had it both, and she's absolutely exhausted. I don't know. What do you think, Chris?
Good for her.
Yeah.
The thing that amazed me was that the prize money is £820,000, which is 11 million Swedish krona.
Wow.
So she'd be a millionaire if she went to Sweden.
Yes, you think as an economist she'd realise that.
I was a millionaire in Italy before Euro. It was easy.
I think it's quite nice they give it. It's technically, I remember reading this somewhere. It's not actually a Nobel Prize. It's Nobel sponsored it, but it's not one of the original prizes. It doesn't really matter. But I think of all the prizes that you get, like a lot of them are for like physics. You know, the discovery of some particle, or the proof of the gravity waves or whatever. I can't imagine the physicians, you know, using that money very, you know, what would they do with it, you know? There's the literature, of course, which is famously always said that's throwing a lifeboat to a man who's made it to the shore. You know, by the time you get the Nobel Prize, you no longer need it. And then peace, which is, of course...
If you need private healthcare, you do.
Yes, that's true. But an economist, I imagine she's probably, you know, she's probably got quite a lot of ideas about what she can do with that. We could look forward to some interesting, possibly some sort of think tank. Anyway, Bruce, according to The Independent, Sunak has been green-lighting transphobia, which is surely Netflix's job.
Labour's Dame Angela Eagle accused the Prime Minister of gaslighting the country by claiming he was being bullied over transgender rights.
Gaslighting or green-lighting?
Gaslighting.
OK.
Gaslighting. Emphasis on gas, not green.
Okay.
But greenhouse gases,
all
that's
these
another
gases
thing.
and greens and lights.
Conservative politicians and sections of the press have, in inverted commas, given the green light for transgendered people to be attacked on the street. And these are the words of Dame Angela Eagle.
Yeah.
Also, people are claiming that this speech he did was similar to the Thatcher speech back in the 80s, where I think she said something about she found it alarming, I'm paraphrasing here, that children felt they had the inalienable right in which to be gay. So there are parallels that are being drawn, you know, about her homophobia and his alleged transphobia.
I mean, it has been an attempt to paint them in the same light, hasn't it? I'm not sure they are quite the same, but it does feel like this is the end of the road for that whole movement to some extent. I mean, there's a sense that the gay liberation, gay and lesbian liberation was a very significant moment in my lifetime. You know, the change of opinion, the degree to which the public has embraced gay marriage now and so on. It was all just such a wonderful, extraordinary triumph. And now this just feels like somebody's just trying to kind of keep that sense that they're fighting a tyranny alive. Is it
it's like... You wonder, it's like feminism. You reached equality, just enjoy it. You know what this reminded me of? You know that famous or infamous interview with Dr. Jordan Peterson and Kathy Griffin of Channel 4, right, which became a masterclass in how to deal with an interviewer. Kathy Newman, I beg your pardon. Became a masterclass in how to deal with an interviewer who is in bad faith. But now we still have this meme that makes rounds on social media where Dr. Jordan Peterson says, well, today I had egg and bacon for breakfast, and Kathy Newman says, so you mean that we should kill all the vegans? So here,
so what you're saying,
Rishi Sunak, so what you're saying is we should kill all the vegans. Here, Rishi Sunak has simply said, do not bully us into believing that a man can be a woman or the other way around. And they are saying, so you mean we should beat up all LGBT people on the roads?
This is a provocation, yes. It's interesting, isn't it, what amounts to a provocation and what doesn't, you know, in different circumstances, but I think that one is a stretch. This, staying with The Independent now, Nicholas, a poll has found exactly what it was supposed to find, I imagine.
Just 9% of British voters think Brexit has gone well, poll finds. You know, nowadays, if you look at, look at South Africa. Can we say the end of apartheid had gone wrong because South Africa is such a poor and dangerous place, and it's been years since it happened? For Brexit, you know, we had a government.
Somebody did say that recently, didn't they? And gone into quite a lot of trouble, I believe.
I can imagine. Shall we recapture the colonies, because many of these colonies are struggling? You know, calling for France to save them. Anyway, the point is, we had 3 years of negotiations with a government that, you know, funnily enough, was led by Theresa May, who was against Brexit in the first place.
Yes.
Go figure. And then we had COVID, we had lockdowns, and still we are doing better in terms of inflation and other factors than some of the European partners.
Yeah.
And these people, even if nowadays Harry Maguire opens Manchester United's own goal, they blame Brexit.
That is absolutely a trope that I've recognised. I think also people are just sort of feeling it disappearing in the rearview mirror a little bit now, are they not?
What with Brexit?
Yeah. Is the kids still raw?
I think the one point that I would like to make is that you get proper duty-free in the airport now.
Right.
And that's one of the Brexit benefits, because I brought back a lot of cheap gin from Spain.
That's a marvellous observation. I think that might have swung it. Final one for this story, for this hour, parenting news, Bruce.
Yes, and this is in the Times, and a close bond with parents at a young age produces kinder teenagers. And basically what this article is saying, policies that allow parents to spend more time with the children could create a generation of more mentally resilient and pro-social teenagers. Children who enjoy a close, loving bond with their parents at preschool age are more likely to grow into kind, helpful, generous and empathetic teenagers, a study has found. Who knew?
Well, the only thing I would say is, having had two children, it's a two-way street. It's for the kids to show a little bit of affection and kindness as well towards the parents. Let them have a night's sleep occasionally. Then they'll get some in the morning, Yeah. I think they have to remember that. I tell you what, I'm being tongue-in-cheek, obviously, but there's a grain of truth to that. And I do think it is possible to guilt-trip some parents who are really struggling to find it in themselves to be kind and warm and snuggly and affectionate when a child is difficult. You have to also just give the parents a little bit of slack and just go, you know what, it's tough sometimes and you have to knuckle down and just get through this. And don't beat yourself up if when they're 12, you feel it's a little bit distant and you did that to yourself. Sometimes that's just the luck of the draw.
But poor parents also have to do 2 jobs and still barely make it, so that's also the economy.
I think so. I blame Brexit. Well, one more section to go after the break. 50 Cent in Wales, mental health in cricket, vaginas in a museum. All is well with the world. We'll see you shortly.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
And so we kick off with the rapper 50 Cent, Nicholas, who I expect you are fully informed about.
I did fully read the article, but yeah, not my territory. But this is a nice, heartwarming story. In the title, Daily Mail says, you can find him in the football club, referring to his one of his most successful albums or singles, In Da Club. Sorry, I don't have a lot of street cred. But rapper 50 Cent makes surprising move to sponsor Welsh under-14s girl team with his brand G-Unit as he follows Wrexham owners Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney's lead. So we know Wrexham is a Welsh football club.
Yes.
Has been owned by these two Hollywood stars, Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney, have changed the fortunes of the club. There is a documentary on US TV about it.
And they played the US women's team as a result.
Exactly, and hammered them. Not a good moment for women's football, but let's not go there.
So
I leave it to Leo
50 Cent is hoping to sort of offset that kind of propaganda disaster.
Well, basically, this happened apparently by chance. One of these girls' dads had been on a tour, worked on a tour with 50 Cent. And other dads jokingly said, hey, how about the sponsorship? And they went to him, were a bit cheeky, and he said yes.
Well, you know, it never hurts to ask, does it, Bruce?
No, and if you've got an Uncle Fiddy, then go for it.
Yeah. Sticking with what I imagine is incomprehensible sporting news for you, Bruce, the cricket and mental health connection. This is well within your comfort zone,
Absolutely.
Right?
I do laugh at the way the stories are divided up, particularly with the one I will be ending on. No spoilers. Yes, so cricket can lead to poor mental health. Speaking at the Cheltenham Literature Festival, Mike Burley, the former England captain, says the sport brings a roller coaster of emotions. I just thought it was boring, and that's why they were depressed.
I don't think it's a roller coaster, I must admit. It does. That feels a bit. It's not really that exciting, is it? It's a long, slow grind.
I don't think it is. It just seems to be a lot of running and batting and all that kind of stuff, you know, like Waitrose on a Saturday afternoon. Mike Bailey also said that short-form cricket is the biggest threat to the sport. Cricket risks damaging players' mental health because loss is more dramatic or drastic than in any other sport.
I think the thing he means is, and I do understand this a tiny bit, I don't play cricket, but I've had some experience of things like this where you get all hyped up for your innings, you go out there and you're bowled out in the first ball or something. There is an extraordinary... Like a vacuum opens up in your heart at that moment. You're now just going to be sitting on a bench for the next day and a half, and you were hoping to make a contribution. I don't think, though, to be honest, that is why cricketers experience mental health problems. I mean, I think they're usually there's a seed there, but there have been a few, and they've left tours and so on. I think it's something to do with the culture in between the matches, to be honest.
Right. Because Ben Stokes, who's the current captain, he has spoken publicly that he's having to take medication to deal with anxiety.
Yeah, but then so like 50% of teenagers doing A-levels, you know, I think everyone's...
The sympathy is just reeking out of the TV.
Luxury guilt news now in the Mail, Nicholas, and I have to say, if you're staying in a Hilton hotel, you're probably already over your daily carbon budget, aren't you?
I suppose so, yeah. It depends how you got there. So, in an exclusive story, the Daily Mail reports that Hilton adds carbon ratings to its menus to encourage customers to choose more environmentally friendly meals. I just think the chefs have gone lazy. They just want to boil celery or whatever Heston Blumenthal is doing. I mean, what next? Are they going to ban mail order brides or long distance relationships?
Honestly, though, I mean, if you want to minimise your carbon footprint, you know, you should not be staying in a Hilton hotel. There are much more energy-efficient places that you could park your rump overnight. That's the main thing you should be thinking about.
Well, considering as well that Kathy Hilton's daughter, Paris, she flew around the world constantly for many years, sort of thing, and Kathy's a real housewife, and they're always in private planes. So it's a bit like, really? You know, what is this?
I mean, I suppose if they think their customers want this, that's another matter, but it's like the wealthy just love to have some kind of tiny little signal they can make, can't they?
Do you not just think it's just another thing? Because I don't think it would put anyone off. Like, if you've flown to America, you've flown to America, so you're not bothered.
And also, every time, I mean, I've seen the menus in hotel, in the room service thing, they have a little symbol for, you know, what might be in it, like V's and P's with fish and stuff. Then you have all the calorie count. The first couple of times you see this, you go, oh, that's interesting. After a while, you just carry on having whatever bounces off the sides, doesn't it?
There's even more pressure on first dates, right? You have to look at the price and look at the calorie intake.
What sort of carbon footprint are you thinking of, darling?
You don't want to be judged by the lady who is maybe a vegan or something.
Anyway, talking of things bouncing off the sides, the London Vagina Museum has reopened, Bruce.
I didn't realise there was one, and I didn't realise it had closed. So yes, London's Vagina Museum is to reopen after surpassing a fundraising goal. And this is the world's first museum devoted to the female organ. It moves to bigger premises after more than 2,500 people had donated. This is in Poyser Street in Bethnal Green.
Right.
And it opens on the 4th of November. However, it's only going to be open on the first floor because there's something wrong with the lift. So you can only
I can't
go
work out if you're telling me a joke now.
No. It's in the article.
Well, don't try and find the clitoris exhibition.
Well, exactly, but you can't go in the lift.
There might be something there.
Yeah.
So as well as having exhibitions, the museum's going to also house a cafe.
Right.
It's nice.
Oh, that's a carbon footprint.
And we'll host, exactly.
Yeah.
And we'll host events and performances, including comedy and workshops.
I would think mainly comedy. I would think that would be the obvious thing, wouldn't it, really?
But then I'm wondering if the workshop, because I remember Adina in Ab Fab, she did a workshop for her privates to get in touch with her feminine self, so I don't know if there's a lot of that going on. I'm for it.
There was the Vagina Monologues. That was a touring show for many years.
Yes.
It must have come to an end now, but that was huge.
Yes, I remember seeing Gail Porter, Karen Dunbar, Kay Adams and Michelle McManus.
Wow, you've got all three of them lodged.
Yes, there you go.
He's a connoisseur.
Yeah.
I know, which is odd for a gentleman of my persuasion.
There is something about Bethnal Green that attracts these quirky... I think the Museum of Comedy might be in Bethnal Green as well, actually. There's a few of these odd... And the Museum of Childhood is there, which I would imagine is not an ideal double for a family day out with the Vagina Museum. But I don't know, maybe not.
Family day out. When I was a young student, I went to the Sex Museum in Amsterdam with a friend of mine, and suddenly her parents showed up, and then one of her professors showed up. So if you go to this museum in Bethnal Green, just make it quick. You don't know who's going to show up at the same time.
I mean, the part of me wants to say just how many exhibits can there be, but, you know, I suppose if they explore everything connected with the whole thing, there would be, you know, there was quite a few. There was the illustration in The Guardian is of a sort of glamorously, like a glittery tampon, right? Did you see that?
Do you know that they're trying to get rid of glitter?
Oh, are they?
Yeah, apparently. It's something to do with Germany. They're trying to outlaw it or whatever because it's not biodegradable.
As part of a tampon or generally?
No, just generally.
Right.
Generally.
Okay,
so, you know, I feel sorry for people going to Kylie Minogue concerts because that's the big finish.
I have two little girls. I'm all for eliminating glitter because the house just is a mess.
No, really? Absolutely. It gets everywhere. So, Guardian, to finish off, I suspect, Bruce, this will be something we always encounter one or two of these. We've got a different one. Have I got it wrong? Is it the Underground City?
Oh, yeah.
It's the Underground City. I'm sorry, might be.
You want to go or shall I?
No, I've just done the vaginas. I'm tired.
Underground City.
Fair enough, and you did it quite thoroughly.
Thank you.
Very tempting little Underground City, but we have 20 seconds now left.
Okay, so most advanced underground city, it's in Turkey, in the province of Konya. Amazing, but if you can't go there, in London, they're going to open the Blitz Undergrounds quite soon, and it's going to be a tourist attraction.
Nice. I have been to the Edinburgh Dungeon. Have you been in there?
I've been in a dungeon.
Yeah. Any dungeon.
A dungeon.
Anyway, I quite like the look of this underground place in Turkey. I would like to go and live in somewhere like that. I always felt the Hobbit in me is aiming to come out. This is how I'm going to retire. Right, that's enough for the evening. We have just time to have a quick look at Tuesday's front pages one last time. The Daily Mail: Hamas will kill a hostage for each Israeli attack. And bad demonstrations outside the Israeli embassy in London. The Guardian: Israel declares siege of Gaza as Hamas threatens captives. The Financial Times: Israel enforces complete siege of Gaza. The Telegraph: Israel no choice but to seize Gaza. The Eye: Hamas threat to execute hostages as Israel prepares ground invasion. The Star: the thin edge of the veg. Heston Blumenthal's expensive veg. Those were your front pages. That's all we have time for. Thank you to my guests, Nicholas DeSanto and Bruce Devlin. I will be back here tomorrow, same time, with Josh Howe and Paul Cox. Thank you very much for your business. Good night.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, All you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News. The people